Emily Martin had nothing left to lose. Since the sudden death of her husband, life had become a constant struggle against hunger, bills, and despair. With 2 small children to feed, she found herself sinking into an abyss that seemed endless. On a dark afternoon, while searching for anything that could help support her family, she stumbled upon something unexpected in the trash. A Persian rug, rich in appearance, that did not fit with that place. But as she unrolled it, she realized there was something more hidden inside, something that could change their lives forever. The discovery put her in a dilemma that could lead her to new hope or push her into unimaginable danger. What was hidden inside that rug, and why had it been thrown away? Amidst a struggle against her own fate, Emily would have to decide how far she was willing to go to protect her children and uncover the truth. A simple rug, a hidden fortune, and the devastating price of revealed truth. Michael Martin's death left an immense void in Emily's life. Alone with 2 small children, she was forced to face the harsh reality of life without a husband, without support, without hope. The temporary job she had managed to get barely covered the basic necessities, and the bills piled up like a mountain that seemed to grow higher every day. Emily struggled to keep her composure in front of Scarlett and Jackson, but deep down, she felt the ground beneath her feet crumbling little by little. The neighborhood where they lived was simple, with houses that, like theirs, bore the marks of a modest life. The walls of their small home could no longer hide the dampness rising from the floor, and the approaching winter promised to bring even more hardships. Scarlett, only 8 years old, still held on to the innocence of childhood, while Jackson, at 12, began to grasp the difficulties they faced, taking on responsibilities that, in another context, he should not have had. In a desperate effort to ensure the bare minimum for her children, Emily began doing something she never imagined, searching for food and reusable items in the local dump. That afternoon, after a particularly tough day, she headed to the dump, unaware that that visit would change the course of their lives forever. As she rummaged through the mounds of trash, something unusual caught her attention. Meticulously rolled up, a rug of rich and vibrant appearance contrasted sharply with the dirty, degraded surroundings. Emily hesitated for a moment, her fingers grazing the edge of the soft fabric. How could such a luxurious item end up here? The question echoed in her mind as she decided to take the rug home. Upon arriving, she spread the rug out in the living room. Scarlett and Jackson, curious, approached to see what their mother had brought. Scarlett's eyes lit up upon seeing the vibrant colors and intricate patterns of the fabric. But when Emily began to unroll it completely, something unexpected slipped out. An envelope. She picked it up carefully, her heart racing. Inside was a large sum of money, more than she had ever seen in her entire life. Emily stood there, frozen, trying to process what it meant. Where did that money come from? And why was it hidden in a rug thrown in the trash? Her mind spun with questions as she looked at her children. The money could pull her family out of misery. But at the same time, the fear of the possible consequences of keeping something that didn't belong to her began to gnaw at her mind. She tucked the envelope away in a safe place, not mentioning anything to the kids. All night, the questions continued to haunt her until, the next day, she decided to seek help. Deep down, she knew she couldn't simply ignore what she had found. It was too much money, and someone was probably looking for it. With the envelope hidden in her bag, Emily walked to the local police station. The modest building reflected the simplicity of the small town. She was attended by Officer Nathan Thompson, a middle-aged man with a keen gaze and a demeanor that somehow conveyed reassurance. He listened intently to Emily's account, his expression growing more serious as she detailed the discovery. "And you found this in the trash?" he asked, holding the envelope now in his hands. "Yes, it was hidden inside a rug," Emily replied, her voice heavy with uncertainty. Nathan examined the money, his eyebrows knitting together in a look of concern. "That's a lot of money to be thrown away like this. We'll investigate. But until then, stay alert, okay? It could be dangerous." Emily nodded, a knot forming in her stomach. As she left the police station, the air felt heavier. What started as a simple act of survival, searching for something useful in the dump, now seemed to have transformed into something much larger and more dangerous than she could have imagined. In the days that followed, Emily tried to maintain her routine with her children, but the tension was constant. Every unexpected noise, every unfamiliar gaze on the street made her jump with worry. And then the threats began. First, an anonymous call. A cold voice on the other end of the line said only one sentence: "Leave this alone, or you will regret it." Emily hung up the phone with trembling hands, her heart pounding in her chest. Then a note left at her door, with the same message, but this time detailing that they knew about her children. The fear that had once been just a whisper was now becoming a deafening scream inside her mind. Emily knew she was stepping into dangerous territory. The choices she made from this point could not only change but define the future for her and her children. Each step brought her closer to the truth, and at the same time, further away from safety. And then, Alexander Lopez appeared. He was everything Emily imagined a wealthy man to be: well-dressed, impeccably groomed, with a smile that never reached his eyes. He introduced himself as a local businessman, but there was something in his tone, in his posture, that made the hair on the back of Emily's neck stand on end. "You have something that belongs to me," he said, without beating around the bush. Emily tried to stay calm, but her hands were sweating, and her mind was racing in circles. "I gave everything to the police," she replied, trying to demonstrate firmness. Lopez narrowed his eyes, the smile disappearing completely. "That shouldn't have happened. Now there's no turning back. You and your children are at risk." Hearing Lopez's words, Emily realized that it was not just a matter of money. She was dealing with something much more dangerous than she had imagined. Her life and her children's lives depended on the next decisions she would make, and by all indications, fleeing was no longer an option. With Nathan's help, Emily began to piece together the puzzle. They discovered that the money was linked to a web of corruption that extended throughout the city, and perhaps beyond. Lopez's influence stretched far beyond that of a simple businessman. He manipulated politicians, business leaders, and even members of law enforcement. Each new discovery revealed another thread in a web that ensnared everyone, from small merchants to the powerful in the city. The tension between Emily and Lopez grew, as did the danger. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a man with power, resources, and a cold determination to protect his interests at any cost. And now, he saw Emily as a direct threat. Emily's internal conflict reached its peak. Should she expose everything, risking her children's lives, or remain silent, protecting them? But then, Nathan, who had become more than just an ally, was attacked in an ambush. Though he survived, the attack was a clear sign. They would not stop until they silenced her. Knowing her only chance was to bring the truth to light, Emily decided to go public. In court, she faced Lopez head-on without flinching. The trial was a spectacle of tension, where every word from Emily carried the weight of a sentence. However, it was the revelation from Maria Vasquez, Lopez's former assistant, that delivered the final blow. Maria brought forth incriminating documents that linked Lopez directly to the crimes and completely dismantled the web of corruption. Lopez was convicted, and with him, the entire network was dismantled. Emily, despite the threats and the fear, managed to bring justice not only for her family, but for all those who had been victims of Lopez and his allies. A few years later, Emily and her children lived in a new home, far from the shadows that had haunted them for so long. Scarlett and Jackson, now older, went about their lives in peace, while Emily found a new purpose, knowing that her struggle, though filled with pain and sacrifice, brought new hope for the future. Emily still felt the weight of the decisions she had made. Since she had handed over the money to the police and the threats began, life had become a constant race against fear. Nathan's presence by her side offered some comfort, but the danger that loomed over her family was palpable. Scarlett and Jackson noticed the change in their mother's behavior, although Emily did her best to keep up appearances. Jackson, in particular, had become quieter, more watchful, as if, even without fully understanding the situation, he sensed that something was deeply wrong. The home phone rang once again. Emily hesitated before answering, her hands trembling. On the other end of the line, the same cold voice from before sent chills down her spine. "This isn't going to end well for you, Emily. You should have stayed silent." She swallowed hard, feeling fear slowly transform into anger. "What do you want from me? I have nothing left." The voice replied in a threatening calm. "You'd better start thinking about your children's safety." Emily hung up the phone forcefully, her heart racing. She ran to the window and looked outside, her eyes searching for any sign of danger. But everything seemed too calm, a stillness that only heightened her apprehension. That night, while the children slept, Emily sat at the kitchen table, her head buried in her hands. Every fiber of her being wanted to protect her kids. But how could she fight against an enemy who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time? Nathan's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her that she wasn't alone, that there was someone willing to help her, to fight by her side. The next day, she found Nathan at the police station. He greeted her with a reassuring smile, but the fatigue in his eyes was evident. "We need to be careful," he said, leading her to a more private room. "This man, Alexander Lopez, is not someone to underestimate. He has connections, people willing to do anything to protect him." "But why me?" Emily asked, her voice heavy with frustration. "I just wanted to protect my children, Nathan. I didn't ask to get involved in this." Nathan looked at her with a serious expression. "You've become a threat, Emily. When you handed over that money, you took the first step toward dismantling something much bigger than you realize. Lopez knows that if you go through with this, he could lose everything." Emily felt the weight of Nathan's words. She didn't want to be a hero. She didn't want to become a figure of resistance against a man like Lopez. But the reality before her was inevitable. Running away was no longer an option. And as much as fear threatened to consume her, there was something greater at stake: the safety of her children and the integrity of her own conscience. "I will continue," Emily said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "If Lopez thinks he can intimidate me, he is mistaken." Nathan nodded, admiring the courage that was blossoming in Emily. "Then let's do this together. But we need to be smart. Lopez won't stop until he gets what he wants. But neither will we." The days that followed were filled with rising tension. Emily felt watched, and the constant surveillance left her on the brink of exhaustion. Lopez, in turn, intensified his threats. There was no more subtlety in his actions. He wanted Emily to know he was lurking around every corner, in every shadow. One afternoon, while Emily was shopping with Scarlett and Jackson, she realized they were being followed. Fear enveloped her like a heavy cloak, but she knew she couldn't show it. Trying to remain calm, she tightened her grip on her children's hands and walked toward the car, her steps quick but controlled. Upon arriving home, Emily locked all the doors and windows, her heart pounding irregularly. Nathan arrived soon after, alerted by the tension in Emily's voice when she called him. "We need to be quick," he said, his expression determined. "Let's gather all the evidence we have and act before Lopez can do anything." Emily knew they were racing against time. The evidence they had managed to collect so far was enough to incriminate Lopez. But Nathan believed there was still more, something that could seal the businessman's fate once and for all. The searches intensified, each discovery bringing to light more of the web of corruption that Lopez had built over the years. But as Emily and Nathan drew closer to the truth, Lopez was preparing his final move. One quiet night, As Nathan was returning home after another day of investigations, he was ambushed. The attack was brutal, but Nathan, though gravely injured, managed to survive. The news of the attack hit Emily like a physical blow. Her only ally was down, and Lopez had shown that he would not hesitate to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. Visiting Nathan in the hospital, Emily felt the weight of the decision she needed to make. His words, even in his weakened state, still echoed in her mind. "You need to finish what we started. Don't let him win." Emily left the hospital with renewed determination. She knew the only way to protect her children and honor Nathan's sacrifice was to take everything public. In court, there would be no room for fear or hesitation. The truth she carried was her most powerful weapon, and she was ready to use it. Emily remained steadfast as Alexander Lopez's trial approached. The rising tension in her chest was constant, but she did not allow it to show to her children. Scarlett and Jackson needed normalcy, even if their lives were about to change forever. She knew that everything depended on her courage to confront Lopez and expose the network of crimes he had built over the years. On the morning of the trial, the courtroom was packed. The air felt heavy, and all eyes were on Emily as she entered the room. Lopez was already there, sitting with a relaxed posture, as if nothing bothered him. His eyes, however, told a different story. There was something dark and predatory in his gaze when he crossed it with hers. Nathan, still recovering from his injuries, was by her side, his presence a silent pillar of support. He hadn't given up despite the attack, and that gave Emily strength. She was not alone anymore, and she knew that despite the dangers, this was the right thing to do. When Emily took the witness stand, the room fell into a dense silence. She felt the weight of expectations, Lopez's gaze fixed on her like a silent threat. But she stood firm, her voice clear as she described everything that had happened since she found the rug. "I never wanted to get involved in this," Emily began, trying to remain calm. "But when I realized what was at stake, I knew I couldn't turn back. The money I found wasn't just a mistake from someone wealthy. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a network of crimes and corruption." Lopez's lawyers tried to destabilize her, throwing questions aimed at confusing her, but Emily remained solid. Each answer was laden with truth, and with each word, she felt her confidence grow. She looked at Nathan, who was watching her from the witness stand, his eyes conveying support and trust. That pushed her to continue, not to back down. But the turning point came when an unexpected woman entered the courtroom. Maria Vasquez, Lopez's former assistant, walked hesitantly to the witness stand. Emily didn't know her personally, but she had heard about her during the investigations. Maria had worked for Lopez for years, dealing with his dirty business and covering up his tracks, but something in her expression suggested she was there to break the silence. Maria's testimony was a fatal blow to Lopez. She revealed documents, transactions, and information linking Lopez directly to the crimes Emily had begun to expose. Her account was cold and detailed, and the room seemed to hold its breath with each new revelation. Emily watched Lopez from her seat, and for the first time, she saw him lose his composure. His hands gripped the arms of the chair, and the cynical smile he used to wear vanished completely. He used dirty money to control everything, companies, politicians, anyone. "I helped cover it up for a long time," Maria confessed, her voice low but firm. "But I can't live with it anymore. He made me believe there was no way out, but now I know there is." The truth had finally emerged. What Emily had started by finding the luxurious rug now culminated in a monumental fall. Lopez, who for so long believed he was above any punishment, was watching his power empire crumble, brick by brick. When the trial came to an end, the verdict was clear: guilty. Lopez was convicted of his crimes, and the sentence was heavy enough to ensure he would never set foot outside prison again. As she left the courtroom, Emily felt a wave of relief and exhaustion wash over her. It was the end of a long and painful battle. Scarlett and Jackson were waiting for her outside, rushing toward her as soon as they saw her. She hugged them tightly, as if she could finally breathe after weeks of tension. Nathan approached soon after, with a tired but satisfied smile. "You did it, Emily. He's finished." She looked at him, tears of relief in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." For a brief moment they stood in silence, sharing a deep understanding of what they had faced. Nathan wrapped his arm around her, and together they walked away from the courthouse, leaving behind the darkness that had pursued them for so long. Emily knew there were still challenges ahead, but the worst was behind her. Now, she could look to the future, knowing that despite all the difficulties, she had overcome the greatest of challenges. The fear that once consumed her was replaced by a new strength, one she hadn't even known she had. And with her children by her side, Emily was ready to start anew. The battle was won. The danger had been eliminated. And finally, she felt that she could build a new life, free from the shadows of the past. Emily and her children now had the chance to live in peace. And this new reality, earned with so much sacrifice, was more valuable than any amount of money could buy. Emily still felt the weight of the events she had just witnessed in court. Despite the relief she felt upon seeing Alexander Lopez convicted, the trauma of the threats and the constant struggle to protect her family still lingered like a shadow. Even with Lopez behind bars, there was a residual fear, as if at any moment another threat could arise from the dark past she had faced. After the trial, Emily tried to return to a normal routine for Scarlett and Jackson, but she knew that what they had lived through would leave scars. Jackson, in particular, had changed. He had become more reserved, more alert to the dangers around him. Scarlett, still wrapped in the innocence of childhood, didn't fully understand what they had faced, but she felt the tension that enveloped her mother and brother. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Even with Lopez in prison, the fear still haunted Emily, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something might still happen. It was only with the passage of time, watching life slowly return to normal, that she began to allow herself to believe that the worst had truly passed. Nathan, who had been a constant presence by her side throughout the ordeal, began to visit them less frequently, giving space for Emily and her children to rebuild their lives. But with each meeting, the bond between them seemed to strengthen. The shared pain had brought them closer in a way that Emily had never expected. On a quiet afternoon, while Emily was in the kitchen preparing dinner, Nathan appeared at the door, unannounced. There was something different about him, a calmness she hadn't seen before. He greeted her with a smile that seemed lighter, more uncomplicated. "Can I come in?" he asked, already knowing the answer would be affirmative. "Of course, Nathan. You know you're always welcome." Nathan sat down at the table, observing Emily with a look that conveyed more than just friendship. He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for something important. "Emily, I was thinking, have you considered leaving here? Starting over in a new place?" Emily stopped what she was doing and looked at him, surprised. "You think we should leave? After everything that happened, I thought we'd finally be safe." "I know," Nathan said gently. "And you are. Lopez is no longer a threat. But I thought maybe you'd want a fresh start, a place where you and the kids can leave all of this behind, without the ghosts of the past." Emily pondered the proposal. The idea of starting over, of distancing themselves from all the places that brought painful memories, was tempting. But at the same time, it meant leaving behind the little they had rebuilt, the security they were beginning to feel. She looked at Nathan, realizing he was offering more than just advice. "Do you want to come with us?" The question slipped out before she could think, and she saw the surprise and emotion in his eyes. "Yes," Nathan replied without hesitation. "If you want me around, I would love to be with you." Emily felt a wave of emotion. Throughout the time Nathan had been by her side, He had become more than just an ally. He had become someone she trusted, someone who had helped bear the weight of everything they had gone through. And now, he was offering more than just his presence. He was offering a future together. "I would like that, Nathan," Emily said, her voice filled with sincerity. "Maybe it's time to truly start over, to build something new." Nathan smiled, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt a genuine peace. There was the promise of a different future, one where fear would no longer be the dominant force in their lives. And with Nathan by her side, she knew she could face anything. Time passed, and with it, the marks left by the battle against Lopez began to heal. Emily and Nathan decided to move to a distant city where they could start anew, far from the memories of the past. Scarlett and Jackson, although initially reluctant, soon began to adjust to the idea, eager for the new beginning their mother and Nathan promised. The new city brought with it a simpler, quieter life. Emily found work at a small local shop, and Nathan joined the local police force, quickly standing out for his experience and dedication. Scarlett and Jackson adapted to their new school, making new friends and gradually leaving behind the scars of the events they had faced. On weekends, Nathan and Emily took the kids to explore the surroundings, going on outings through the countryside and nearby mountains. Each moment together reaffirmed that they had overcome the challenges and found a new chance at happiness. The days that had once been marked by fear and uncertainty were now becoming moments of peace and reconciliation. As Emily watched Scarlett and Jackson play in a field of wildflowers, she felt a tranquil happiness that she hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if the weight they had been carrying had finally dissipated, giving way to a bright future full of possibilities. Nathan approached her, his gaze reflecting the same feeling of contentment. "We did it, Emily," he said, taking her hand. "Finally, we can leave all of this behind." Emily smiled, gripping Nathan's hand firmly. "Yes, we did it, and I'm grateful for you being here, by our side." Nathan hugged her, and together they watched the children running across the field, free from the worries that once haunted them. The journey that had begun with a carpet thrown in the trash, filled with mysteries and dangers, now concluded with the sight of a new dawn, where Emily and her family could finally find the peace they so richly deserved. As the sun set, painting the sky with golden and pink hues, Emily felt that this was the perfect ending for the journey they had traveled. It wasn't just the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new life, where happiness and serenity were more than just distant dreams. They were the new reality she had fought so hard to achieve. And with Nathan by her side, she knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family. We hope you enjoyed this narrative. Help us by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel so you won't miss more emotional stories that touch the soul. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. We would love to know what you think. Thanks and feedback are also welcome. See you in the next exciting video. Until then.